welcome back to another video feature of the Immersive Worlds Handbook. Today I'm outside of Levining, California, and maybe you can see here I am standing in front of an upside-down house here at the Mono Lake Historical Museum. So in this video feature I'll be talking about roadside attractions and discussing the imagination that they hold in all of our consciousness, perhaps as we are driving down the highway in the United States and looking for something interesting and offbeat to find. So let me take you on a tour of some of these interesting aspects of Roadside Americana. As we continue to look at the upside down house here near Levining, California, let me suggest that one of the things that characterizes this thing we call roadside architecture, roadside Americana, is the sense of something out of the ordinary, something that strikes us as being strange, weird, bizarre, even sublime. And a bit later I'll talk about the issue of whether or not we can call these examples kitsch or not. Well, and certainly if you're passing through Pearsonville, California, and I think the population is maybe 16 or so, you want to stop and look at the water tank advertising Pearsonville as the hubcap capital of the world. And you have the, is this the Uniroyal gal here? Another part of, Americana attraction like this. But Pearsonville is known for this woman who has collected over 80,000 hubcaps, and I think probably that is the shop there that has all the hubcaps. But another part here of Roadside Americana in Pearsonville, California. And the other strange thing here in Pearsonville is this play area, and it looks like pretty sure this is a McDonald's play area. Some of the stuff at least. And I had read online that near here there was a grave of some sort, and the person described it as kind of a creepy place. So you can see here. And here, another spot on our look at roadside attractions. We are at the Wigwam Motel in San Bernardino, California. And what I found to be quite interesting about the Wigwam Motel in San Bernardino was this emphasis on Route 66 Americana. We'll talk about this a little bit later in examples at Disney California Adventure and also Juan Puyo, their museum to Route 66. But I think this is quite key because a lot of roadside architecture today connotes something that's lost. And in fact, when I was at the Wigwam, I was struck that I was in a time warp. I mean, you don't see these examples of this type of architecture any longer today. Perhaps you might say in Las Vegas and in theme parks, but even in the case of Las Vegas, we actually see that this type of architecture is diminishing. Theming is being de-themed for various reasons. But here's an interesting point I would make. If you look at the Wigwam, it was actually one of many Route 66 Americana inspirations for the revitalized Disney's California Adventure, specifically their Cars Land and Radiator Springs areas. So there's an example here. I would say that there's a pedagogical reason or purpose behind this kind of Route 66 Americana roadside architecture. So I think it's very easy for people to dismiss it, but in fact I make the argument today that this is an important design inspiration for all designers of theme spaces potentially around the world. And with this being said, I think it's important to point out that a lot of this architecture is being lost. It's being demolished. It's no longer in use. This example here is a place I found on one of the mini Roadside America websites, and specifically it's a giant paper cup. And if you saw the video here, indeed it is in a factory area that appears to be vacant. So there are actually societies out there that strive to preserve this part of American history. You'll have to watch some of my other videos on the decline in tiki culture and tiki bars to get a sense of this. Also, you can see here another example. Sometimes we find this, this is going down 395 in California. We see examples of this type of architecture popping up all over America. And I wanted to make just a few points here then about some key characteristics of this type of architecture. One, we could say it involves signs, and I don't mean road signs, I mean semiotics in the sense of something that's very identifiable. And it's identifiable in a commercial sense, of course, in that sense that it's associated with a brand or a particular product. It is something that is noticed for sure because it is immediate to us, or it resonates with us, and thus it's also an important part of our memory. It serves a function in terms of reminding us of something that is there and that we should remember. And then I think a question to address here also is this question of whether or not we can call this kitsch. And in terms of this issue of kitsch, I would say, if you do a typical Google search and look up roadside architecture, roadside Americana, you see images like this. But I would emphasize that one person's kitsch is another person's masterpiece or high art. And I'll save this discussion for a future video in which I talk about this particular issue of kitsch, and in reference to tiki bars, which I think often have some of that same associations or associations that we see with roadside Americana, roadside architecture. In fact, what's curious, and this is from Riverside, California, this is the site of the original navel orange tree, and I thought this was interesting because on the one hand you see this place on some of these roadside Americana websites, but yet it has this important historical designation. And it's also very similar to, I showed you the paper cup earlier, also in Riverside. It's something that's a bit out of the way, and many people probably wouldn't even notice it. So it also has that level of something maybe that is perhaps forgotten. Now, the videos here I mentioned earlier about Route 66 and specifically the Juan Pollo Museum. This is one of many themed venues that is part of this chicken restaurant chain that's popular in Southern California, this from San Bernardino. And I'll save the description of what you're seeing here for my other videos on this very, very interesting set of restaurants. What I find curious about this is how they've assembled all these images, what I called earlier the signs, the identifiable characteristics of Route 66, of Americana, of decades ago, this period of time in American history in which I think we saw something quite sublime and remarkable in terms of the success of all sorts of venues, whether they were roadside attractions, theme parks, hotels, what have you. And just at the back of Juan Pollo, I think it's coming up in the video here, you'll see actually this very odd sight of a giant chicken breast at the back of the restaurant, and I think you'll see that in just a second. I was just trying to pan around and capture everything I could at this curious restaurant. Oh, indeed, here we go. Here is the giant chicken breast, which again highlights the iconic status of this type of architecture. And then lastly, I wanted to show you, in the sense of a second preview here, a very curious site I discovered in Kern County, California, a place called Robber's Roost, where essentially they have a gift shop and a convenience store, and they've created this faux fictive ghost town. I found it very, very curious, and please do watch my video on this site. It's, for me, one of the most interesting folk, what I might call a folk themed space in terms of how they've created the associations that they've done in this fictive ghost town. But also you see things like advertisements for frog balls and other things that certainly strike us as part of that odd joy and the sublime nature perhaps of roadside Americana. So I hope you enjoyed this video feature today in various parts of California looking at roadside Americana attractions, and please come back for additional video features of the Immersive Worlds Handbook.